Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Wednesday, the 14th day of March, 2018. I want to say that I trust that everyone had an enjoyable night, peaceful night as well. And I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I'm your host, Orit Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open, and there is always someone waiting to take your calls. Normally, it's that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, email us at fortherecord. That is one word, fortherecord, at candw.ky. And we're up and running again. Can receive emails now as well. And don't forget our WhatsApp number. That number is 925-3261, where you can leave a message or a voice note, which will be played during the course of the show as well. So we have several means where you can communicate with us, or you can communicate with our listeners as well, and we welcome you to join us in the discussion. Before I introduce my guest this morning, I just want to give some kudos and some shout outs to the staff at the Health Services Authority, in particular, staff at the Lions Eye Clinic, staff at the ambulatory care unit at the hospital, and the doctors, in particular Dr. Klaus and Dr. Rachel Gooding as well. I'm sure that there were other faces in the operating theater, but after they put that little thing in your vein there and put you to sleep, you forget who you saw or who you didn't see as well. But I want to give a shout out to them. And people have mixed reactions in relation to the Health Services Authority and the service that they provide. And I guess that is based on their experience. I must say that all of my experiences so far at the Health Services Authority have been great. All of the staff have been extremely professional. They make you feel quite welcome, make you feel extremely comfortable as well. And even the staff, when you're sitting out in the waiting area, the regular staff, the janitorial staff, whomever, everyone crosses, good morning, good morning, good morning. You know, you go to some foreign countries and you just don't get that. On the streets of New York City or in buildings, you don't get people telling you good morning. And if you say good morning, they look at you as if you're weird. So the atmosphere at the Health Services Authority, quite positive. People talk about losses at the Health Services Authority. You cannot put a value on health. You cannot put a value on health. And when you look at the structure that we have there, and if you've been into one of those operating theaters for the few minutes that I was conscious in there, and you see the enormous amount of equipment and the staff that they have there to in order for that institution to function properly, it is amazing. So unless you've experienced it, be very careful about how you criticize the Health Services Authority. I have nothing but good to say about them. And then one more caution before I introduce my guest is to say that we know that healthcare is not inexpensive. Prevention, better than cure. The old people always say that. And I say this now from experience as well. If you have issues, things like glaucoma that can be controlled, and you have been warned at the early stages that you need to take care of it, please do so, because the costs that will come at a later stage may be exorbitant. And when I'm talking about costs, I'm not talking about monetary costs. I'm talking about the physical cost as well. And one last thing, I have enduring and a new respect for people who have challenges with their eyesight. Just having one patch over my good eye and only being able to see it out of the eye that has been damaged by glaucoma, I now know what it is like to just only be able to listen, to have someone lead you around, and to not be able to see. I have a newfound respect and understanding for those persons who have challenges when it comes to being able to see. So with those few remarks, I'd like to introduce my guest this morning, fresh off the plane from the United Kingdom. Not just fresh, but he's recently been back, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who's been doing a lot of traveling, and I am sure that your learning experience is increasing by the day. Good morning, Mr. Bryan. Welcome back to For the Record.
Good morning, OC, and thank you so much for having me on. And good morning to the listening audience, those in particular in Cayman Brac here, Grand Cayman, in particular Georgetown Central, and across the world, because the show goes pretty far. Thank you for thank you for allowing me to be here. Yes, I just not too long ago recently got back from the UK, and I must say that I enjoyed the trip. I learned a lot. It was a Parliamentary Association forum for members of the Commonwealth, speaking about things that are concerning to the Commonwealth member states across the world. But it was a good experience to remind myself that the Cayman Islands is a part of something that's a bit bigger than just our own island, to make you feel like you're a part of something large. So it was a good experience, and some things developed while I was over there that I'm excited to speak about this morning, and some other matters that I hope to discuss this morning. Is the Legislative Assembly is proceeding starting this morning at 10 a.m. So I may be leaving the show a little bit early just so I can go prepared. It's the first day.
Sure.
Get all my paperwork and stuff for that in order and be prepared for the first day session. And I will be bringing two motions to Parliament potentially tomorrow. And I want an opportunity to discuss those. I think most people probably have heard by now what those two motions are, but just to give some generalities around them and the basic concept behind it, and hopefully persons may be willing to tune in to the Legislative Assembly proceedings to hear the debate and hope that they pass. Also, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the youth parliamentarians who participated in their debate on Monday. It was lovely. I was blown away, and I must say I'm a bit biased because I was helping with the opposition members.
Okay, and you were part of the committee.
But I was a part. Yeah, I was a part of the committee of the Youth Parliament Committee to help train and go through the procedures and stuff like that with the kids. But we kind of split into groups. Barbara and Councillor Connolly and Councillor White were both responsible for dealing with the government side, there were so many more kids, and because the opposition only had 6 members, I was kind of over there counseling with them, and Alva would pop in now and then because he obviously has a bit more busier schedule than I do, being the deputy opposition leader. So both him and I assisted in respect to the opposition members, and obviously we had persons like yourself and other speakers who came in and gave them advice about the elections and so on. But I was really pleasantly pleased by both sides for that fact, in respect to the debate. You know, it shows that our young people are intelligent and capable of adding good content to the discussions about any topic here in the Cayman Islands. One of the developments that I'm excited about is the proposal by the chairperson, Ms. Barbara Connolly, Councillor Barbara Connolly, of a continued Youth Parliament Association that gives the opportunity for debates to be happening more on a regular basis, you know, and it allows kids to get involved and give their contributions, and legislators be able to even go and watch and hear what the young people are saying. I think it's such a great idea to get in their mindset because so everybody was like, oh, it's so crazy how they think. Everybody said that afterwards, saying, you get a viewpoint into their minds in that debate. And I was like, why don't we have that more often rather than just once a year? That keeps us in touch with their thinking and be able to better represent them. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, it was so amazing. I was well pleased and I was happy to be a part of it. And I think Barbara, being the chairperson, must be given so much congratulations. She did a good job. It's her first time as a legislator like myself, but she took full charge of that committee and made sure that it ran smoothly, obviously with the help of Ms. Zena and her crew from the Parliament itself, who's an expert and done this so many times. But for the first time chairperson, she did a good job and excelled it, I think.
And speaking about debates, long before social media came along, you heard more about school debates. You hear about moots and law schools and things of that nature. But what it does, and I'm glad that the initiative is there to continue this, not just wait until the time of the year when you have a youth parliament, but for it to continue, because what it does, it shows our young people that when there are differences of opinion, the way to resolve it is by talking about it, by conversing with each other rather than resorting to other means.
Yes. And find ways of change, because sometimes, you hear young people are concerned, oh, well, nothing will ever happen. They take that no caring attitude from early stage because they don't understand the whole system. Being involved in this process really gives you a full understanding of how democracy really works. And when you understand it, you respect it more and you give more appreciation to the process. Even me as a new time legislator, I had to give more respect to the process now myself.
Okay. We have one caller. Do we want to take the caller first? We'll take the caller before we go to our commercial break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Good morning, caller. Welcome to For the Record.
On the road, are they belongs to the people, or they are once you put the sidewalk there, they belong to the public?
I think I'm not an expert on this, but I think when planning requires you to put a sidewalk on your property, it is for the use of the public so that they don't have to walk into onto a major road or a thoroughfare. So it is normally a part of the public's right-of-way to walk. In terms of ownership of it, I'm not sure, but if you continue to listen to For the Record this morning, I will be able to get that information from someone who has vast knowledge of it. I will be, and I'm sure they may be listening as well.
Isn't Westfield on what is that Stadium Road? That what it,
yes.
There's a sidewalk there, and the person trimmed it, like they don't want to trim the edges. The road is sidewalk, it's approximately about 6 feet. And if one person is walking across there, my shoulder is touching me, I'm right to the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And if it belongs to the public, me myself will go cut down for free.
Okay, I'll check on that for you, caller, and we will have an answer for you. I guarantee you that we will have an answer for you, hopefully before this show is over.
You know who you're talking to?
Yeah, recognize the voice as usual.
Well, I not call no names, but your friend said something over the radio. When you remember something me him talking about on the plane?
Yes.
And he says something that a certain person is better than him. You tell him, don't say that, don't tell nobody else that.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Not too clear on it, but I'll get it from you. I'll call you and get it from you. Thank you very much for that, caller. We're going to go to a commercial break now, folks. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who of course represents Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. And I'm going to pass the mic right back over to Mr. Bryan.
Yes, Ozzy, thank you so much. And right before we went to the break, we were just talking about the youth parliamentarians and how well they did. One of the things that also I was excited about is as I observed the youth parliamentarians in their debate, we had a number of students from the schools who came to also observe in the gallery. And what was exciting was the attention that they all gave to the debate. Because I don't think they would have given as much attention if it was us regular politicians doing it, but their peers were involved in this conversation. So they really tuned in. And you can see the interest amongst them. They're like whispering, like, "Yeah, that point was a good point." And even at some points where members were hitting home their position, they were cheering on and stuff. So the enthusiasm was there, and that made me feel good because I know that there's more persons out there who or more young persons who would love to actually be involved in it. I think the thrill of a good debate. And a good discussion or open dialogue and trying to find a solution is quite thrilling, So I think that because we had at least about 75, 80 people, I think, students, if not more, in the gallery. And I think that the interest is there for something like what is being proposed with the continued debates amongst young persons in the island, not necessarily in the parliament. Parliament is one time a year, but you can create the parliament atmosphere, like say, for instance, in our town halls, and even send it out to schools and say, here's a topic and we need to find some members, and then everybody can chime in, right? Give them the chance to go ahead and do their own research and bring it back and possibly even have a televisor on the radio, because I think regardless if you agree with the position or not, it definitely will give you an insight to that generational's mindset. So that in itself is a great value for us as a society, and particularly to us as legislators, because it's sometimes the hardest thing to do to make sure that you represent persons who are most times silent. How do you know what their position is? How do you represent them? I'm grateful to still be at a young age where I can say I have a little bit of connectivity still left with the younger ones. I'm not far out now, but so I have that advantage. But it's particularly like, say, for instance, some of the senior legislators, they sometimes have it difficult with that connectivity with the younger person. So this kind of initiative would be a great idea, and I look forward to it.
Okay. Can we prep our audience for what's going to come after we go to our 8 o'clock news?
Yes,
we have enough time that we can talk about climate change and your proposal.
Okay, so basically, when I was over there in the UK, I made a suggestion to all the parliamentarians and the different members of our parliaments from across the Commonwealth, from India to Canada to Australia to New Zealand and the UK. I mean, we'll go through the list of the different countries shortly. But ultimately, what I was successful in doing is getting 22 of the 25 countries that arrived to sign their John Henry to an agreement letter to go out there and advocate their heads of government to come back to CHOGM, and CHOGM is the abbreviation for Commonwealth Heads of Government Meeting. And that is a very significant meeting, because if you think about all the countries that are part of the Commonwealth, this is the time where they make major decisions that affect the Commonwealth. And ultimately, I got them all to sign a letter that states they support the concept of and want the creation of a council which job would be to focus on climate change effects. So the name of the council would be the Commonwealth Climate Change Council. Now, I only gave it that name because that summarizes most of the things that which association be associated with and what it's be dealing with. Now, they can change the name. That's all up to them. It's because at this stage it's in conceptual phases. So I created that and got the support of 22 different countries to agree to that. And hopefully, also I spoke with Mr. Jeremy Corbyn over there, and he has agreed to support it in his conceptual idea as well. So the intention now is for that to be brought to the discussion during the minutes on the order paper. There's a procedure that I've gone through, and I'll explain that when we get back. But that's a synopsis of it, and I'll go through what the intention of that letter. I'll read the letter for everybody so they can hear it, what the role and responsibilities are. But when you think about a Commonwealth Climate Change Council, you can get to imagine what the parameters are of that just based by its name. But I'll explain that more when we get back from the break, and then I'll explain the two motions quickly now so you can get an idea when we get back.
Yep. We still have about 3 minutes before we...
One is for the government to exercise the right to mandate the post of fire chief of the Cayman Islands to be a post for Caymanian only, and for them to mandate the post of chief immigration officer to be Caymanian only. That's one motion. And the second motion is to increase the pensionable withdrawal amounts under the law from 35,000 to 100,000 for the purposes of persons being able to pay off their mortgage completely, as well as to help persons. This opens up an avenue for persons that are facing foreclosure and who have enough money in their pension to pay it off. So those are the two things that I'll be bringing. I'll discuss a little bit more of my concepts behind them when we get back.
Okay, I think they want us to continue to talk still because we're not ready for the news yet.
Well, in respect to let's go back to the Commonwealth element.
I see the name of, it speaks of a CPA youth delegate, Fabian Frizzell.
Yes.
Tell us about him.
Okay, well, this young man is actually and we go back to young people again, because young people are usually always the spirit to move things. I wasn't as bold without his motivation, to be honest with you, because I proposed the idea and it was because we were talking about what things can help the Commonwealth. And everybody was talking about climate change, and people were concerned about the hurricane recently and how severe it was, and more threats of tsunamis, earthquakes, and all these different types of things that affect our nation states. And when I brought up the idea, I said, listen, we should create something like this. And people were like, yeah, clap, clap, clap. And I never thought about formulating any letter or anything at that stage. But afterwards, he got up and said, and this is youth enthusiasm, he said, listen, let's get a document together and get it signed. I think that's a great idea, Honorable Brian. And that's an action plan we can leave here with. And I said, yeah, why not? And him and I, during the lunch break on the third day, went off and we used our lunch break, and we had some assistance and some drafters, and we drafted up the letter of the conceptual idea of what I wanted, and we put it together, and he basically seconded it, because it's not a motion, but it gives the formality of the support, and we drafted it out. I'll read exactly what that is, and then everybody else, all the other countries, got to sign it.
Okay, folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back immediately after the 8 o'clock news. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who represents Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. Before I throw the mic back over to Mr. Bryan, got some information for our caller who called about sidewalk and sidewalk maintenance. If a sidewalk is on the sidewalks are normally placed on the property owners, on the property of the owners of the establishment, if an establishment is there, if there's a structure there. If there is no structure there and it's just vacant land and the government has put the sidewalk there, then normally the government will maintain the sidewalk and to ensure that it is clear. if it is where there is an establishment, either a house or a business establishment, then it is the responsibility of the owners to maintain the sidewalk because it is on their property. I hope that that clarifies everything now for our caller. Back to you, Mr. Brian.
Thank you, OC. And as we were discussing before, for those who may have just tuned in, before we went to the news break, we were discussing some developments that happened while I was away in the UK at the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Forum of the UK. So just to give you a quick synopsis again before I go into the detail, I was able to secure some support from 22 members of the 25 member states of the Commonwealth that attended the forum to support a Commonwealth Climate Change Council to go ahead and advocate for their heads of government to come back and give support to that in the CHOGM meeting, which is the Commonwealth Heads of State meeting in April. And I before we went to the break, I outlined all of that, and I'm going to go into what the letter says now that most persons may be interested in. And it says, I'll give you the background behind why it was written this way as well. It says, "Dear Commonwealth Chair in Office, we the below promise to advocate to our heads of government to support the concept of the creation of a Commonwealth Climate Change Council. The Council's responsibilities will encompass, but are not limited to, the collection of, monitoring and tracking of natural disasters and natural catastrophic events connected to or caused by global warming. The creation of such a council will raise the standard of awareness and assist with the preparations of and avoidance of natural disasters affecting the Commonwealth member states. We, the member states, are all affected in one way or another by the likes of hurricanes, tropical storms, earthquakes, rising water levels, flooding, temperature levels, tsunamis, ocean acidifications, monsoons, and droughts, and advocate for the collective approach to monitor the effects of these events. It is in our best interest from a financial, moral, and economic standpoint to have such a council, as many member states may not be able to afford the required resources, technology, and labor necessary for such a commitment. With the ever-growing concerns around the negative effects of climate change, we, the below signatories, see the urgency of a creation of such a council forthwith. We advocate the creation of a committee and action plan from the CHOGM, which is Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, to address the effects of the global warming and natural disasters for Commonwealth member states, to establish a remit for the Commonwealth Climate Change Council. This promissory note will be carbon copied to the following names, with the hope of the topic being placed on the agenda as a priority matter for discussion and commitment at the CHOGM meeting." Now, as I said to you before, we asked the opposition leader, and he's given conceptual support already. He loves the idea. I'm going to, if I can, once I've gone through this part, I wouldn't mind playing the clip so the listening audience can hear what he had to say about it. I think they might be able to pick up my laptop here. It's also being sent to the Prime Minister, Ms. Theresa May. It's also going to be sent to Mr. Akbar Khan, who is the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Ms. Baroness Patricia Scotland, who is the Secretary General for the Commonwealth Secretariat. The Honourable Amelia Lacafar MP, Chairperson for the CPA Executive Committee. Now, these persons all have relevance into respect to some level of senior authority when it comes to that CHOGM meeting. So those persons, the actually original went to the chair, which I think is Mr. Akbar. The chairperson for the CPA Association UK has taken the responsibility to take the originals of all the signatories, and that original will be placed in the hands of the chair of that meeting. And you know the chair is the serious person in respect to that meeting, so he will get that. And then there'll be a carbon copy to all the rest of the persons that were listed here. All the members who signed it and who was at the forum will also get a copy of it. I am giving the Premier a copy of it. Him and I spoke on Monday at the Youth Parliament meeting, and I'm pleased to say that the conversation went very well. The plan now is basically, I think, if you can look at it like this, what I was able to accomplish is just a spark of a momentum to get something done, which is the creation of this. I've gotten 22 member states to basically say, listen, we're going to make sure our country is supporting of this. We've got the opposition leader. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if you got that email yet, but in the signatories, you'll see that there's some UK MPs who've already signed it. And that in itself, I think, is a level of significance because they're hosting it. And it's a government member, not a member from the opposition. So if you have the opposition leader giving conceptual support to it, and then you have an MP who's on the government side also supporting it, I think that gives some hope there for it. Anyway, let me go back now to the discussion with the Honourable Premier Alden McLaughlin. The intention here is what we've been able to do over there by getting this movement going is to ask the Premier to try to pass on the baton to him to then go ahead and continue to advocate when he gets to the Chogram meeting. But it's important that I highlight some limitations in respect to what he can and cannot do, right? Because I'm not trying to make it seem like he can get something done he can't get done. He's doing merely what I'm doing, but probably at a higher level, which is advocating for the creation and getting support. Once you get the support, then you hope that the natural process will happen, it will get done. The Honourable Premier, if we all know, the process is that we are overseas territory, which is a little bit different than the other Commonwealth member states. The other Commonwealth member states have their own vote. We don't, because
we sit behind the UK.
We sit behind the UK because technically they are our vote. So the hope is that the Premier, though he may not necessarily have a say unless requested to speak, and in most situations the overseas territories are not asked to speak. But in this event, because I was the mover of this initiative, the plan is that be prepared that if there seems to be, which was what I hope, a big momentum for this, that if he's asked to speak about it, that the conceptual idea, which was actually, believe it or not, was created here. Because before going off to this forum, one of the things I did, or one of the many things I did, was do enough research in respect to the things that affect the Cayman Islands. What can I talk about when I get there for the Cayman Islands? And the topic primarily is about, one of the topics was climate change. That is important to us. Brexit was one of the conversations. That is important to us. A lot of the other things wasn't as important, like, say, for instance, potential trade rearrangements as a result of Brexit and all that, because we're not into that. We're in financial services and tourism. So I focused on the two things that would affect us. Now, I try not to get too much into Brexit and financial services because I think that the government should be the only voice that says anything on that. We don't want any conflicting viewpoints on the international stage. I always stick to the principles. We're first class. We do everything right. And that's it. If you want any more, you speak to my leader. At the end of the day, he's my leader of my country, and that's how that works. I don't try to. We have our local politics. Internationally, we're the best of friends. That's how I see it. So, where was I? I kind of lost my frame of thought now. Anyway, so getting back here,
you were talking about the fact that the Premier,
yes,
would
So basically, the Premier is limited on what he can do. But what he did say is he understands conceptually what I have accomplished over there. He now has to investigate what's the best line of action to continue the momentum into this. So he's going to try to make a few calls. The good news is that climate change discussion is already on the agenda. So this would be a subheading under another heading that is already there. So it's not like trying to get something placed on the agenda. And that's the good news. And I think that there's enough attention on it already by all the different member states. Because you have countries like Canada, India, New Zealand, all the Caribbean member states all signed it and said, listen, we know that our leader is going to come with the support. So I have no doubt that the discussion is going to come up under this heading of the agenda of climate change. And then that there was a suggestion to this creation. And then you have the opposition leader also saying that he gives support. So the hope is that they agree to it conceptually, and then they can iron out the finer details. And also, if they need our premier, because it was sparked by the Cayman Islands members, that the premier can have something ready to say, because much of the information, I remember where I'm at now, much of the information I got was based on research here. And I want to thank Hazard Management so much in respect to assisting me with the information I needed for this report, and which gave me the conceptual idea of this Climate Change Council for the Commonwealth.
Okay, we're going to take a break now, and what I want you to do is prepare your iPad to see if we can play
Mr. Corbyn's
Jeremy Corbyn's remarks as well. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who represents Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. We're talking about the CPA forum that he attended, and we're going to attempt now to play for you remarks made by the leader of the opposition in the UK, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Okay, bear with me here, and we're off.
Being prepared to commit resources wherever we've got them anywhere in the world to help people in emergency. So, for example, the Royal Navy's ability to help in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean was very valuable. I want to make sure our Navy is equipped with the appropriate, often smaller vessels and the smaller, lighter aircraft that can be used in disaster relief activities. And that's something I would want to develop. And I think the idea of a Council of Commonwealth promoted by yourselves, which looks at both the climate change issue as well as the disaster relief from hurricanes, floods, or earthquakes, volcanoes, and all those things that unfortunately do happen, would be a very good initiative indeed. I'd like to hear more about it.
Okay. And I hope that was as clear as I heard it, but I've heard it so many times. I think it may be important that I actually read out what was said by him, just for clarity, sure. Right? And it says, hold on, I just have to find his quotations here. Okay. He says, we have been prepared to commit resources wherever we've got them in the world to help with any emergencies. For example, the Royal Navy ability to help in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean is very valuable. I want to make sure our Navy is equipped with the appropriate, often smaller vessels and the smaller, lighter aircrafts that can be used in disaster relief activities. That's something that I would want to develop, and I believe the idea of a Council of the Commonwealth promoted by yourselves that looks at the priority at promoting climate change issue as well as the disaster relief from hurricanes, floods, and earthquakes and volcanoes, and all of those things that are unfortunately do happen would be a great initiative. So that's the context of him hearing about it. We were obviously very limited with time with him. I didn't realize that. I was hoping to speak with him longer. But that was his position based on a question after all the members were ready to commit to this. So then I was hoping to actually find the UK MP who already signed up for it. I'm going to look for her throughout the process, and then highlight that. But you saw some of the other names from the various different countries who were on board as well. Where are we at? The significance of this, OC, is that Cayman can be recognized as the country who sparked a real movement. And I know that there's some people out there who go, global warming isn't real and all that, but I know those hurricanes are real. I know that. and I know they're coming stronger. And I mean, I listen to the older heads, and they say they obviously recognize the difference in the heat, recognize the difference in levels of rain. We're now having tsunami warnings. I've never heard of us having tsunami warnings in the past. You see other disasters happen elsewhere, and they're happening more often at high rates, breaking records. I'm not what persons would call a tree hugger, but I'm a realist. And until you can find some other reason for why these are happening, I'm going to go with the common sense approach to say something is wrong here. And we are contributing to that as a people of the planet by way of, emissions from cars, not recycling, and all those other elements, cutting down the trees and all that. I don't try to bring that into this discussion because people are going to go, oh yeah, another tree hugger, and they want to touch the environment and all that. But the truth is, we have to be more responsible. Another factor, which I'm so excited about, is that normally the smaller nation states are the ones who get the most damage as a result of things from climate change, like say, for instance, a major hurricane, if you believe that they're connected. But we're the ones who given the least to the damage, because places like the United States, the places like large continents like India and countries like that, who create more pollution but don't have the same amount of effects as the small member states. And I highlight that because I'm happy to see places like India, places like Canada, who have signed on to say, listen, they support this. And the other advantage about that too, and if you were hearing the letter when I read it out, is the collective approach from a financial standpoint, which is so important in this.
Yes.
Because the necessary resources to create a council that with the responsibilities that I've highlighted in the council is a lot of scientific work, a lot of research and collection of data, a lot of analysis to help prepare us to say, listen, I've noticed a trend over the last 10 years in respect to your water levels increasing. I think it's time for you to consider changing legislation to bring back persons can't be able to build so close, or something, whatever that comes out of that data and that analysis, as well as preparation and recovery.
Okay,
that's what this council can do, and we can't afford to do that as a Cayman Islands. You're talking about up to potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. And if we do it collectively as a commonwealth with all of these countries, then it would be a drop in the bucket if everybody just do their donations. So that's the
question in terms of how do we ensure that there isn't a duplication of efforts in terms of any other entity or organization that may be going down a similar route. We note, for instance, that not many of the OTs were at that meeting, like the BVI, those Turks and Caicos, those that were affected by the past, the most recent hurricanes and stuff. And we know that in those jurisdictions, there also talks about climate change, and about resiliency, about the UK stepping up its efforts. Do you intend to sort of collaborate with those entities as well?
Well, it's a very good question you asked, OC. Duplication efforts doesn't make any sense, and then you waste the money and all the likes. But there are some limitations to how far I can go, right? I'm a parliamentarian. I'm an independent person. I'm not a part of the government. I did what I thought I could do where I was and within the power I got. I galvanized a set of
what I'm talking about, the organization that was seeking to establish.
I'm gonna get to that. I'm just trying to put the role of who is gonna do what, right? So I did that part. Now I passed on to my head. He now can discuss with the UK to see in respect to that. I know that the other overseas territories have the agenda already and know that that climate change is on that agenda. So the concept of this creation of this council, once the discussion comes up, it's going to be a natural thing to say, listen, okay, we do this down here already, or we do that down here already. Can we pool these things? Another thing that a lot of people don't know is there's something similar to this council already in the Caribbean. But the reason why it doesn't do as well as it can do is because it's only in the Caribbean, and you're talking about limitation of resources. We had to get those bigger nation states involved and buy into this because, for one, they give us the most pollution and two, they have more funding availability to do the things that is necessary to ultimately achieve the goals that I think we want as a nation state.
And the other plus that we have also is that we now have assumed the presidency of UCODA as well.
Yes.
And so the Cayman Islands and our premier, he now chair UCODA, so that gives him that additional platform.
He mentioned that to me on Monday, and I didn't quite understand the significance of it until somebody else spoke to me more about it. But I think what is presented here is a great opportunity to Cayman to shine yet again, to be the leaders in yet another discussion. Think about the marketability of this, right? That Cayman sparks the creation of a Commonwealth Council that be focused on and gets funding from the Commonwealth together for climate change. Just that statement alone can give us, from a tourism perspective, that the Cayman Islands cares about the world. That is some kind of marketing you can never afford to buy. So and not only that, but it's the moral right thing to do. I'm one of the younger members of the parliament, and yeah, I have a level of tree hugging in me, and most of the people younger under me love environmental things and think they're important. Sometimes not everybody does, but that's the generation that is coming, and then it's my job to look out for the future. So I say all of that to say that I'm hoping that what has transpired in that visit will turn out to be something more. But it's really for me to now pass the baton on. Anything I can do from here. Actually, I think it may be important to highlight this. The youth arm of the CPA branch over there have actually sent an invitation for me to come back as an observer. Doesn't have any significance at all because I'll just be able to see there. But I'm actually thinking about going if I can afford it, because I'm not sure if the CPA here or the Parliament will. At the Churga meeting
for the
at the Churga
Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Okay.
And so I would really like to
They
go.
welcome you to come as an observer within their group.
Within their group.
Okay.
The other way is if the Premier asks me to be a part of his delegation, I would love that. I don't want to put that kind of awkward position to him, so I haven't suggested it to him. I understand politics. I respect it. I say, here's the baton. This is Cayman. Internationally, we're friends, so to speak, in respect to that. I'm not against him in any way, but I understand politics. I understand that there may be hurdles in the way of what was that look like for his party and his group if he took me. I understand that. So I'm not going to put him in that position. I would love for him to step up and actually ask me, and I would definitely say yes, but I wouldn't put him in that position. But I'm considering taking the youth arm approach as a delegate, because if this goes as far as I want it to go, I would love to be there to witness it. So I'm going to have the discussions with the Speaker about whether or not it's something that can fall under the funding of Parliament to pay for me to go, since I've been invited, or whether it's something I'm going to have to find out of my own pocket and all those kinds of things. So, but I was going to say something very important.
The youth CPA youth arm in the UK, they just have observer status themselves.
They have observer status as well. They don't have any voting status.
Right. Do they have anything on their agenda? Have they told you what their plans are? In terms of that meeting.
Yes, actually,
meeting. Because I can see the politicians jumping onto this simply because it is being led by young people, and that is where the momentum has to come from now. That's where the future is.
Exactly. And I think that every politician wants good numbers to say, oh, look, I did something good, and that's the one thing I think is going to help this, is because it's a win-win for everybody, right? And that's why I believe it's going to succeed. And especially with the youth arm pushing behind it, they don't want to be on the bad end of saying no to this, to the UK youth arm, because believe it or not, I have the parliamentary privilege at that forum. I could vote. They couldn't. They were observers as well. But obviously we're like-minded because we're a lot similar in respect to the age group. So I'm just basically the vehicle for this to go through. Anyway, I think we have a...
Yeah, we have to go to commercial break now. Actually, I slipped up on that a little bit. Got, too engrossed in the discussion. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who represents Georgetown Central in our legislative assembly. Mr. Bryan has recently returned from the Commonwealth Parliamentarians Forum, which was held in London from the 26th of February until the 1st of March. And I think, Mr. Bryan, you're going to explain to our listening audience so that there's no confusion what that meeting consisted of in terms of the parliamentarians and the observer groups as well.
Okay, so just for clarity in respect to the youth arm and the parliamentarians who actually went. In any parliamentary associations, they always extend a group or a committee of youth arms, and most countries have their own CPA youth arm. Like Cayman has a youth arm, and that's what we saw on Monday in respect to the youth arm in the debate. The UK, because they were in charge of the hosting the meeting, they had their youth arm there too, and I dare say that with them hosting the CHOGM meeting gives them a leverage over the outcome, in my view, of that CHOGM meeting as well. So the youth arm, though they don't have any voting rights per se, they do have an influence over the leaders who are there to make the necessary votes, because politics is politics. And if you have a youth arm who were promoted across the UK, wanting and driving and pushing a movement, not only is it something for them good to do, but politically good to do as well. So when I say the youth arm second in this idea, from a parliamentary proceedings perspective, they don't have any say. But as a parliamentarian at the forum that I was at, I'm an elected person into the forum. I had to move the drive. It was the creation of the idea was mine. They just brought the spirit to it to say, listen, let's take charge. And I was like, yes, I almost forgot my youth spirit there. Thank you so much. Let's get together. And then we went across over in separate rooms after our meetings and got the momentum going. And you can see all the other heads going, yeah, why didn't we think of that? You know, and sometimes it takes a young person to remind you of saying, be bold. Just charge. And I go, yeah, why not ask everybody to sign it? Because people go, well, how did you do that? I go, just ask them, talk to them. We all think that this is important. Why not sign it? Mm-hmm. So is that boldness that you take that creates success. And I'm what I want is for our leader to take it now and just be just as bold and just say, listen,
to the next level.
Yeah. So and I think he truly wants to do that based on our conversation. So I'm positive about that. But in respect to the youth arm, that's their limitation in respect to what they do. They're really promoters and persons who contribute to the discussion, and their conversations are taken into context, but not necessarily mandatory have to be accepted. So they also have the ability to watch and observe.
Yeah.
So when I said I was invited to come through that forum, is because many of the youth members, a lot of them got really excited. I went out to dinner with them and all that. It's like, I'm so glad that you proposed something like that. This is because young people are want something instantaneously. They don't.
Most of them are at college age or still in high school?
A lot of them are professionals. One of them is a lawyer. Three of them are entrepreneurs and stuff like that. It just when you say the youth arm, it just means really that you're not elected.
Right.
So you have persons who were. Well, I think a couple of them were in their late 20s.
Okay.
So, technically speaking, there are adults who are very intelligent. One of the members is a lawyer in Bahamas. But that's how far the links of the youth arm goes. You know what I mean? And each they have a senior committee in the Caribbean of youth arms, and then they choose their head, and then they go up to another level. So just like how we do in Parliament, they do the duplication of that. It's just like here in Cayman, we don't give as much attention to the youth arm, and I think this was what Councillor is trying to do.
Yes.
And I think then eventually we'll start to understand the magnitude, because it's also a way of proper succession planning within politics. These persons who are part of that eventually get the experience that is necessary, not only from parliamentary debates, because that's a debate is just one thing, but the truth about politics is understanding how it all works, the mechanisms, the meetings, and what is expected of you, and that you can get through an association, because some of them have been members for like 6-7 years.
When you look at some of the delegate names there, some outstanding names, Damian Crawford, for instance, from Jamaica, came up through the young parliamentarians in Jamaica as well, came up through their whole youth organization. So and demonstrates what you're saying there.
I must say I was really impressed by him. He made some great contributions. Both him and I have been in contact since the forum. I hope that when I get maybe a 5 minutes break, I can take a trip over there and meet up with him, because we made good friendship. But I'll say this for the Jamaican community: every single delegate from the Jamaican delegation signed it. And matter of fact, I didn't even have to pretty much push too hard with all the Caribbean islands, because everybody understood what we meant.
Yeah.
They all want it, right? And they all see the importance of it. I think the way I had to do the work was actually with countries like India. Canada, not so much, but the bigger member states, New Zealand, where they go, well, what is in it for me? Because everybody, when you think climate change, probably the one thing that you can probably visually see that is more severe is a hurricane, right? But what we don't recognize is droughts can be as a result of a climate change.
Severe winter storms, and the UK has experienced several of them.
Actually, while we were there, they didn't have the snow like that for the last 10 years, and we had to experience that. So to convince the bigger member states, which is so important from a financial and support perspective, having them come aboard was so good, because they themselves are starting to see those little things. India brought up the whole drought thing, because at first I didn't recognize I was eliminating persons in my discussion, because I came prepared thinking from Caribbean perspective. Yes. And then one of the ladies from India, she said, "Young Brian, I think you have a good idea, but you don't think about India." I said, "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" She goes, "You don't have droughts." And I said, "Oh, I don't even I didn't think about it, because droughts don't affect Cayman." And ultimately, I was worried, because
we're hearing of warnings now that
that we might actually this year.
Drought.
So I was saying, I was worried that I was eliminating concerns for those states. Some of them, like you said, winter storms, tsunamis, monsoons. We don't have monsoons here. So I had to actually, before I present, because I actually had the opportunity, thanks to the chair of the UK branch, allowed me an opportunity to present to them, because he was supportive of the idea too. So they gave me 15 minutes before everybody to explain and try to encourage them to buy into the idea. But thankfully, she made that comment to me before, because I'd have been more focusing on the Caribbean perspective, and I was able to add in the theories and the concerns that affect the bigger states as well. And then afterwards, after a little bit of jigging and smiling and waving and touching and that kind of stuff, I was able to convince the bigger states to do it. So I'm really excited. By all means, nothing has transpired yet, so there's nothing really to be too excited about. But to have, and I'll say this, the reason why we didn't get all 25 members to sign is because the other 3 left before we were finished with the draft. They had to leave early the Thursday morning, and we didn't get a chance to give the document to everybody till the lunchtime break. And because I had talks with them, they were already there, and unfortunately, some of them said, Ken, we're sorry, but we had to catch a flight now, and they were leaving, because the last day is never really as formal as the previous days. So I think that if I had got the letter finished and transpired before they left, I would have had a 100% success based on conversations.
But you still have a commitment from them.
Yeah,
despite the fact that they haven't signed.
Exactly. So the copy of the letter and those who did sign will be sent to them, and they've already got the commitment to go ahead and make sure that their country is coming to the meeting with the perspective of giving support to this council and the basic principles behind what the council will stand for. Now, what is in this letter, I must make this clear, is conceptual. At the end of the day, the Trogam, if they were to support this, they will have to go down and say, okay, here's what we think the responsibilities should be. Here's how we think it's going to be financed. They will go through.
They will establish the structure.
Exactly. So it's just about getting everybody to buy in and accept that they'll do it. Then you can go ahead and fix it however you want. But I think we all agree on some things like the monitoring, responses to it, tracking and collection of data. So I think
it would be good if one country would give an assurance that they will take the lead to develop the structure, to develop it, and then whether or not you decide that you're going to have it headquartered somewhere in a particular country.
I'm gonna say something to you because I know that you go riding with a very good friend, right? And I know you and him are very close. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's something to suggest because I think that it would say a lot for Cayman if we took that charge. Now it's obviously a lot of responsibility and he does a lot of work. I must give him that, and he has a lot on his plate. But I know that there's enough people who are here who believe in that are specialists that will do majority of the work for him. He can just be the face of it. If anything, exactly.
To do it as well. Let's take a commercial break. 9 o'clock headline news. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who represents Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. And Mr. Bryan is going to have to leave us early because he will be attending the meeting of the Legislative Assembly this morning, and he has some more preparations to make before that meeting convenes. So I'm going to turn the mic back over to you, Mr. Bryan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Orrit Corner. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think this morning's discussion is the first time I've had an extensive opportunity to explain what transpired while I was in the UK for the Parliamentary Association UK branch members. I really appreciate that because this story has been out in the media, but you can only get limited amount of context of what it does based on a few lines or a minute and a half story on television. So this expanded version here on the show was a great opportunity. Relevant questions you put back to me, and so people can quite understand it. And if there's anything people are missing or don't quite understand of what transpired, I'd be happy to explain to you in better form. I'm hoping that this discussion is only the first of many to come, and I'm hoping that the next time we'll be able to say that the meeting happened in the UK, and here's what happened, and some positive news. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to speak about my motions. But I know that I've had opportunity to speak on that on this show before I went to the UK. So your avid listeners will have a basic idea of my position on that. But the motions speak for themselves, really. And just for remembrance sake, the two motions. First one is to increase the amount allowable by law to withdraw from your pension plan to pay off a mortgage from $35,000 to $100,000. So basically, if you got less than $100,000 left in your home and you say, "Boy, I'm sick and tired of paying this mortgage," and you happen to have that amount in your account, you can take off that number one bill off of your table, because the number one expense for most people in the country is a mortgage. And if you think about it today, for a person who's listening, can you imagine what it would feel like to have that mortgage payment no longer necessary even before that time that you had planned it for? It frees up a lot of opportunities. It takes off a lot of stress, because so many people worry every day that, God forbid, I lose my job. And stress is a serious killer. It brings on a lot of other ailments. So it's an opportunity. But the focus of why I brought that motion in the first place, though, was to try to assist persons who were losing their homes. Because how the idea came up to extend it was, there was a person who were losing their home, had $60,000 in their pension. They owed, I think, $48,000 on the home, was in foreclosure because they lost a job, couldn't get another job in time. When they did get the job, they were still so backed up they could never catch up because they were over a year worth of backup, and the bank was demanding that they, in order for them not to foreclose, for the person to pay up the arrears before moving forward, and they could never do that. So ultimately, there was enough money in the pension to pay off her mortgage, but she couldn't access it because the law states that the maximum amount you can take out is $35,000. Now, ultimately, I know that wasn't the spirit of the law when it was presented in the first place, was to assist people from potentially losing their homes, or to just simply get that bill out of the way. The earlier you get that bill out of the way, the less interest you're going to pay, and there's other benefits as well.
Do you think it was a compromise when they
Yes.
set the $35,000 as opposed to sort of like leaving it open?
Well, funny enough, I asked the mover of the motion that simple question, and I don't think it was actually taken into consideration, because if you notice that there's 3 sections of the pension law that kind of deals with that. 1, for paying off a mortgage. 2, for if you want to buy a home for the first time, and then 3, to buy a piece of land. And in all of them, the figure is $35,000. I think so. They were just going with it, and for transparency's sake, the person who moved that motion, and I thank him a lot for doing that and being considerate, is Mr. Elio Solomon. He brought this motion to the House and got it passed and got the support for it. But at the time, I think the thinking was $35,000 is enough. That doesn't take too much out of the pension. At least this is what he said, as well as that should be able to pay off the mortgage at the end, to give them the freedom at the end. And $35,000 should be enough for a deposit for our average home from the bank perspective. And the $35,000 was the average price for a house lot at the time. And I think so you're right, they came to the compromise in that. But I don't see anything wrong with saying, listen, $35,000 for land or for deposit, but for paying off a house, change the figure. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. Just moving on, because I do have to go. The next motion has to do with asking the government to use the powers that they have available to them via what I understand to be, and remember you brought up that other point. I got some clarification from the, I'm waiting for some clarification from the Attorney General in respect to whether the law that you highlighted, the point and sorry for the listening audience, probably not aware, but there's a subsection that he highlighted that contradict my motion, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, because it's something I got to address before going to the House being ill prepared. So you helped me tremendously. But I question it through the Attorney General to say, doesn't this the last law come in supersede the first one? Because technically 40 was there first, then 46 came afterwards. So where is the conflict? Does the last one supersede the other one? And he said, well, that's according to what I understand, yes. So he's waiting to get back to me. But ultimately, regardless of what the outcome of that is, we know that the government has a right to discriminate via employment through the Constitution. So that's my secondary nuclear option, right? Ultimately, the motions are calling for the Chief Fire Officer of the Cayman Islands to be a position for Caymanians only, and for the Chief Immigration Officer to be Caymanian only. I think it's something that most people believe. Those are 2 common posts that a lot of people are aware of, and be happy to have those as Caymanian only. And one of the first questions that always come to me is, why only them? At this particular stage, the reason is...
You want to solidify customs as well, because traditionally, customs has always been, that head of customs, collector of customs, always been a Caymanian as well.
I agree. At this particular stage, I would love to put about 50 different posts on that list, but baby steps. I don't want to, I think at this particular point, with the political support of the public in respect to these 2 positions, I think that it would be hard fought for the members of the parliament to not support it. They're going to have to go out and face a number of people if they get up in this parliament when I bring that motion not to support it. And I think they know that. So I think that there's a level of success here. And I think I can debate reasons why you should support it. And I've already considered some of their potential hurdles they'll put in the way. So it boils down to whether we can convince the masses And politics is politics, right? So these are the two that I thought I can get away with at this particular point.
They would have to have compelling reasons not to support it. Now, I can see one of the arguments being, well, shouldn't we be looking for the best of the best?
I know.
And there are occasions when you do that. But when you have had positions where Caymanians have performed exceptionally well, exemplary, then why should you change that? So we're looking for the best of the best who are Caymanians. The best of the best.
Don't be taking my debate from me.
Just out of here. Help me along.
You notice I've been holding back because I don't want to. Oh my goodness, is that my daughter's school? Hi guys, that's First Baptist. Hi. Oh, that made me feel good. I wish my daughter was in there. Anyway, but you're right. There's going to be the answer to the question of whether or not there should be more persons. I can promise the public this: there will be more people. But at this particular point, there'll be more motions in the future to call for more positions to be Caymanian only. I am playing. Unfortunately, Steve told me this. He said, "Kenneth, Brian, one thing about you is that you don't understand. You need to understand the game of politics." And I responded to him one long time ago. This was about 3 years ago. He was actually on the show, and I said, "That's the problem. I don't like to play games." But you know what? He was so right. I need to learn it. Hence the reason right now, this is a political strategy. I'm only bringing two things that I think it'd be hard for them not to support. Set the precedent. Once the precedent is set, then I'll bring the other ones, and then you're going to have to come and give good reasons to the Caymanian people why we can't do that. Now, granted, you're going to have to give way to the government to make sure that they can prepare the positions properly. Like, say, for instance, the fire department, according to what I understand, is in some serious turmoil, as opposed to an immigration department. I think they can move that motion tomorrow morning and say that post can be Caymanian only, because I think there's a number of members that are capable of doing that job, as well as you can also consider the element of secondment from different departments.
And more than lip service has to be done to the whole concept of succession plan.
Exactly. And OC, I'm so glad you said that, because what this motion then does is, if you create the post to be Caymanian only, it forces you to actually put your money where your mouth is. Put the money in training, because the truth is there's a mandatory law that forces you to do this now. So you don't want to put somebody there who's not capable. So you're going to say, listen, I need this in the budget. I need this training because I got Joe Johnson coming up and he's the next one in line. I need to have him ready. So you'll advocate for it even harder. So I think the basis of the idea is there. There's so many reasons for it. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed. I hope that it doesn't, because I'm going to be really not happy.
How long do you anticipate that the LA is likely to go on? Because I think the premier travels to Hong Kong.
Yes, him and some other members, and I want to wish them well and safe travels. They're going off to a very important meeting. Unfortunately, we're only going to have 3 days for this sitting of the House. Okay. The motions themselves don't start until Thursday. They're going to try to get through the government business today. Hence the reason I'm going to try to sneak out of here now.
And the order paper has already been prepared?
The order paper has already been prepared. Only for today, though.
Okay, just for today.
And I'm worried that they're not going to be able to squeeze in everything government business in today, and may have to suspend the private members' motions, which starts tomorrow.
Or go on late tonight.
Or go on very late tonight. Mm-hmm. So I personally predict 3 late nights to accomplish all the things, because there's a number of private members' motions. Remembering now that each person is allowed 3, and there's 6 members of the opposition. That's 18, even though I'm only doing 2. So technically 17 could be on the order paper, and each person has 2 hours to present, 2 hours to respond, plus other persons can add to. So there's, by all means, I don't think all of them have to go that far.
Right.
But 3 days is a hard squeeze. But I think that all parliamentarians are willing to try to make sure, get it all done and squeezed in, because the government has to go off the things.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being here this morning again. I wish you all the best in your debates in the Legislative Assembly, as well. Folks, please stay tuned. Mr. Brian is going to leave us now. When we return, we will have 15 minutes of open mic where you'll be free to call in as well. You'll be free to call in during the course of the show all of the time, but you can call in. I'll talk about a few things as well. We'll talk about the Stevens deportation. He has left voluntarily, which has saved a lot of headaches and probably some monies as well as far as litigation goes. So please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We had Mr. Kenneth Bryan, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan, in the studio with us. He has left to go to the Legislative Assembly. We have about 12 minutes more to go on the show. We have open mic at this point in time if you want to call in, if you have any questions or observations. I have one message that someone has said. It says a person has a doctor's appointment and takes the day off sick as they are unsure of how long they will be at the appointment, but goes to work later that day to perform scheduled activities. Should that person be paid overtime for the extra activities? What does the labor law say about this? I haven't had time to look at the labor law, but I would say from a practical standpoint, if the person has taken the day off, what the writer hasn't indicated here whether or not they have taken a sick day off, because if they have taken a sick day off, normally you have a certain amount of sick days per year. If that person had not exceeded their sick days for the year and they took a sick day off, then it would be up to the employer and the employee to come to some agreement as to how they would be paid for the time that they went in. Obviously, the person is dedicated to their work because they had time still, and despite the fact that they had taken that day off, they went in to do the work. I'll try to see if I can find some response to this, but it would appear to me as if something that the employer and the employee could work out themselves. Claiming overtime for it, though, would be another issue, and I think overtime has to do with the fact whether or not you have accumulated a certain amount of hours for the day. Again, goes back to the whole concept, did the person take a sick day off? Because if they took a sick day off, then rightfully they may expect to be paid for the time that they came in and put in there. The other part is maybe they should have consulted either a supervisor or their boss before going into work to get an understanding of it. But we'll try to see what we can find out in terms of the labor law. Speaking of Mr. Stevens, you would have heard me say on this show that we could probably expect some sort of litigation in regards to his deportation. We know that the deportation order that was to be signed required him to leave the jurisdiction by the 16th of March. That would be on Friday. Indications are the press releases that we received and everything indicates that he has left before. I think there were compelling reasons why Mr. Stevens decided to leave, and we pointed out some of them. First of all, he left. He was a flight. He left the Cayman Islands as a result of allegations. We had to go through an extradition proceeding to get him back to the Cayman Islands. He fought those extradition proceedings, so he really didn't want to come back to the Cayman Islands. When we eventually got him back here, served part of his time, was released to serve the rest of his time, and deportation order was issued after he has now gone. Now, there are other instances, and I'm not in a position to mention them here on the air, but there are other instances of persons married to Caymanians who have been convicted of serious offenses, either drug-related offenses or even some similar to or even more serious than Mr. Stevens' offense. And while every case has to be judged on its merits, we here in the Cayman Islands need to take a position when it comes to tolerating and to allowing persons who have committed serious offenses in the Cayman Islands to remain in our community, to remain in this jurisdiction, to remain and live amongst those persons who they have harmed. We have to take a strong position on that. Yes, we have to respect the rights of Caymanian spouses to have their other half here to help to support them, especially when there are children involved as well. But we must create a balance, and we have to decide which one is more important. And like I said earlier, every case has to be judged on its merits, but we have to make that decision. We have to decide. We see other countries take the position that if you have committed an offense and you're not a citizen of that country where you cannot be deported, if you're not a citizen, we're going to deport you. We have to take that position in order to protect our children, to protect our families, to protect our properties here in the Cayman Islands. We have to take that position. There have been instances when persons have been spared deportation from the Cayman Islands and have gone on to either repeat the offenses that they committed before or to commit other offenses as well. We are aware of the fact that if a person is deemed to be a prohibited immigrant to the Cayman Islands, that the governor and cabinet can issue an entry permit allowing that person to remain in the Cayman Islands under specific terms and conditions. That can take place. That can happen. In many cases, when that is done, those terms and conditions will include the fact that if the person is involved or convicted of similar offenses or any other offense, that person will be deported. So you give them a second chance. And if that second chance is wasted and the person commits an offense, then it goes after that as well. I'm just saying this simply because there are similar persons in the Cayman Islands like Mr. Stevens, and I want to applaud the government for the position that they took in this instance. I believe it was an easy choice to a certain extent, and then to a certain extent it was not an easy choice as well. Want to applaud them for that and say we expect to see more of it. And what we want you to do is we want you to highlight it when you do it. Let the people know that you have deported them, that you have given them a second chance, and that is it. We have too many people wanting to live in the Cayman Islands who have positives to bring. There is no need for us to keep those who bring nothing but negativity to the Cayman Islands, who come and are here for their own selfish purposes, who come to destroy the Cayman Islands, to corrupt the Cayman Islands, and those are the persons who need to go. So when they commit offenses, let them go. Yes, consideration has to be given if you're married to a Caymanian, but my argument is, and in many, many instances, it is the male partner who is the convict. That male partner is normally non-Caymanian. There was once a time in the world when the family followed the head of the household, and the head of the household was the male. And I don't want to sound chauvinistic in any way, but where have we gone now to the days where the man follows the woman as opposed to the woman following the man because of who's the bread earner as well. So those are my thoughts in relation to that. Kudos to the government for the actions that they took in relation to the deportation order. Mr. Stevens got the point, got the message, left without any further litigation. Of course, his name will now be placed on an immigration stop list that prohibits him from entering in, remaining in, or residing in the Cayman Islands. And I'm sure that many of you out there in our listening and viewing audience would bid farewell to Mr. Stevens and any others who are convicted of similar offenses or any other egregious offense against the Cayman Islands or against the people of the Cayman Islands as well. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to thank Miss Donna for filling in for me, Miss Donna Bush for filling in for me during my absence as well. My understanding is that she did an excellent job, and we know that she always will do that as well. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who is less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to Word of Charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want or crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling, Dwayne Ebanks at 12 noon for Talk Today. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.